What's going on, guys? It's your boy Ross here at Shy Sports Ross. I received a bunch of really great questions from Bulls Twitter, so let's go through them together. Make sure you're following me at Shy Sports Ross on all the social media platforms, and make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. So our first question is going to come from @TFristel, who's curious about our rebuilding strategy. He asks, what would you do as of right now? Rebuild around Paw/White, keep the big three, total reset, or trade Lavine and or smaller pieces at the deadline and keep most of the roster? So that's a lot. That's a lot to take in. It's a great question. And it's a great place to start. You know, I think with the way that the team played without Lavine and now bringing him back into the fold, and it's kind of working so far, you know, with a small sample size to be very fair. But Zach is a good player. There's no doubt about that. And Coby White is looking like a good player himself. So you have to be able to manage that. And I do think that ultimately the best move forward would be to find a trade partner for Zach Lavine and try to build around, Patrick Williams, Coby White. Maybe you keep DeMar DeRozan around as like that veteran mentor leader. He has such a great relationship with the players. He's got so much respect in that locker room. So I could see them keeping DeMar DeRozan and actually trading Lavine and keeping Vucevic too, because Vuce, the style that he plays, the way that he has that inside-outside game on offense, he makes the game easier for younger players, right? Because he's the kind of guy who can clean up some of those mistakes offensively. Defensively, a little different story, but offensively, Vuce is a very player-friendly center. So that's kind of where I'm at, is I think that the team in its current construction is not good enough to win anything. I don't see Zach being the first or second best player on a championship team at this current moment. That could change, and I could be very wrong about that. And, you know, I'm on record. This is a YouTube video. You could go back to this in years and see if it's still true. But as of today, I don't think he is that guy, and I think the Bulls need to set their sights a little bit higher than just being, you know, an 8 or 9 seed. It's not going to do it year after year. And that's just kind of where they're at right now. You know, Zach and Coby as a duo, it's cool, it's fun, it's interesting, it's fresh, but fresh. It reminds us of a couple years ago, but it's actually working this time. But you know, how sustainable is that, and how many wins could you get from that duo long term? So I think that the move forward, in my opinion, would be to try to acquire some draft picks, to draft some players, to put around the young players, more young players, just keep bringing in the youth movement year after year. You see the best teams, what they do to win on the margins is they acquire late round draft picks, second round draft picks, late firsts, and they use those picks and they have a high hit rate on role players, on players who end up developing into something. We see that year after year where the best teams tend to have a cycle, a rotation of good young talent. Teams like the Nuggets, teams like the Heat. It just seems to happen year after year because that's what good drafting does. So that's what I want for the Bulls. I want to see them actually commit to a rebuild strategy that is logical, is focused, and has a clear directive, which is to acquire youth for the sole purpose of developing and eventually contending. So that's where I'm at with that. That was a great question. Our next question is from the Bloody Horns podcast. Shout out Bloody Horns podcast. They want to know Vucevic or Drummond. And I know this is a question that you have been talking about. A bunch of people have been talking about for a couple weeks now. Both. Why not both? Why not both? I think Vuce and Drummond make for one of the best center rotations in the league. I mean, you have two guys who complement each other nicely. Vuce has an inside-outside game. Drummond is that classic back-to-the-basket center, down low, just dominating guys with his body. Phrasing. But you know what I mean. Drummond is such a high energy, high octane player for the Bulls. Like when he comes into the game, he can change the momentum, and that's so important, especially for a team like the Bulls that sometimes struggles with maintaining momentum. You know, this is a team that has given up a lot of leads, a lot of late leads. But with guys like Vucevic and Drummond, you know, late in the game, you can rely on them for a bucket. And I think that's what's so important about having both of them. Because, you know, you saw when Vuce got hurt, Drummond was right there to step in, and he was dominating. You know, it wasn't like he was just filling in for Vucevic. He was playing at a really high level, and he still is coming off the bench. So I think it's good to have Vooch and Drummond on the same roster. If the question is who should be the starter, I do think that Vooch should still be the starter, but that doesn't mean that Drummond can't play really key minutes late in games, because he still should. Drummond is one of the most important players on this team right now. His rebounding on offense and defense is kind of a big fuel for a lot of the wins that we've seen recently. So they need Drummond. They need to get Drummond involved. They need to get Drummond incorporated, but they need Vooch incorporated as well, because he's the one who stretches out the defense. That's his role. He stretches the defense and he opens up shots for other players just with the gravity that he has around him. So Vooch and Drummond both have great roles on this team that they're playing very well right now. And I don't want to mess with a good thing. So I'm good with it. I know Vooch, sometimes he has his up and down performances, but overall, I think it's a really good fit having both of those guys on the same roster. Next question from Master Havoc, and he's asking, with how this season is going, would you prefer the retool or the rebuild? And I think I just kind of answered that, but it's a good question because retooling is the term that everyone likes to use when it's not a full like tear down rebuild. And I guess what I'm talking about technically is just a retool. I know that I keep using the word rebuild, but when you think about it, it's not trading you're not doing a full teardown. You're not trading Lavine and Vucevic and DeRozan. I'm proposing a Lavine trade to bring in some more draft picks and to start giving some more playing time to the younger players on the team. So I guess that is kind of a retool. I suppose that is what it is. And I know that I sound really harsh on Zach. It's nothing personal. I promise. It's just like, dude, I think we've tried this enough. This has gone on for how many years now? And it's clear, Zach is a good player, but he has a ceiling. And the type of players that need to be around him are so specific. It's too challenging of a roster construction to win with. And I think that's the issue that the Bulls have found, is that the roster construction, they were just trying to force it. They've been trying to force it for so long, and it just hasn't worked. All right. So, Northside Chicago regular wonders, what's the realistic trade return for Zach Lavine? Always the hot topic, right? Zach Lavine trade rumors and Zach Lavine trade proposals specifically. People love throwing some wild names into some of those trade proposals, some wild ideas out there about what Zach's true value is. Let's kind of break the mystique a little bit. Let's get to the heart of why Zach's value seems to be low right now and what that actually looks like in practice. So obviously he has not had the best season of his career. He's been hurt this season. Even when he was healthy, we don't really know how healthy he truly was, but even when he was healthy, he was not playing at the highest level that we know he can. So that has definitely left a lot of teams skeptical about, kind of what I said earlier in this video. Can he be the guy on a championship contending team? Those teams are wondering the same questions that we're wondering. So if they're thinking about trading for him and they have all these questions and this doubt, you're not going to want to give as much up for that guy, right? They need to see something else. They need to see more from him this season, I think, before we can say, here is the big trade package that Zach Lavine will net. But here's kind of what I think. You got to have that first round pick. The first round pick has to be in there. It could be 2 first rounders depending on the players that get involved. But I think the question was realistic. I know what I would want, but I think realistically, you got that 1 first round pick, realism, maybe a second rounder too, just to sweeten the pot a little bit. Then it's going to be 1 young player, and then it's going to be a salary fill. So that could be anything. A salary filler could be anything from a veteran who's on a bloated contract to a guy on an expiring deal, whatever that ends up looking like. You need to be able to salary match Zach Lavine, who's on a pretty big contract right now. And so that could end up being 1 or 2 players. So you're looking at a first round pick, young player, 1 or 2 kind of role players who are on contracts that might not be team friendly. And then eventually, hopefully, maybe another first rounder. I don't know. That's the thing about the 3-team trade, is that maybe you could get another team involved. You get another player sent somewhere else. Maybe you get another pick from another team. That's been kicked around quite a bit with Zach Lavine as well. So that's kind of the realistic package that I think the Bulls could actually net. That kind of reminds me of some of the trades that have been for similar players. I don't think it's going to be anything like a Kevin Durant trade or anything like that. You're not going to see 4 first-rounders thrown around for Zach Lavine, unfortunately. Pan says hi, by the way. So that's realism. That's the realistic trade package. But I did kind of allude to it. I would personally like to see 2 first-rounders and a young player. That would be the package that I would be going out for if I was AK and Mark. I'd be looking for 2 first-rounders and at least 1 young player. Our next question coming from Mo Banks. Hey, shout out Mo Banks. That's my guy. He's thinking about player development. He asks, what attributes do you want to see in Patrick Williams add to his game going into this upcoming season? Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think the big thing that we all kind of know about Pat is that he has struggled a bit with handling the ball. And, kind of creating his own shots, getting to the basket on his own without, turning the ball over, taking a bad shot. I think he's gotten a lot better at it. I've had some videos going over how much better he's gotten at it. So the number one thing I want to see Pat add is a tighter dribble, tighter handles. I just want to see him blow right by guys. I don't want to see any more of that, dribbling off the leg stuff. I don't want to see him dribbling into other players' hands, dribbling into the defense's hands. He does that quite a bit still. And I think that's not the number one thing holding him back, but in terms of ways that he can make his game more adaptable so that the team feels more comfortable with the ball in his hands, number one would probably be his ball handle and his dribbling. But aside from that, definitely want to see him more consistently hitting those 3-pointers. He's got that step back mid-range game, but if he could have a step back into a 3-pointer game, then we're talking about an actual potential star player. You see the kind of shots that Kobe's able to hit from his position where he has those fire step back 3-pointers that can change the entire dynamic of a game. I want to see Pat with some pull up threes, some fadeaway threes, some step back threes. I want to see Pat add more to his 3-point game. Right now he's a good spot up 3-point shooter. He's good at doing those catch and shoot threes, but I want to see a little bit more from Pat outside the perimeter. I think that he can really take his game up a notch. You want to talk about being the next Kawhi. Let's start seeing some real clutch shots from 3. Then we're going to be talking about the next Kawhi. But that's all for this episode where I'm going over some questions from Bulls Twitter. Thank you guys so much for sticking through and watching. I really appreciate all the love you guys have been showing my channel lately. So make sure to hit like and subscribe if you have not yet already. You can follow me at Shy Sports Ross on Twitter and all the other social media platforms. And we will talk again very soon.